Dungeons & Dragons, Part 1, Death House. Alright, so let's go through our character introductions first. Introducing my character, the, Crowley, who is a freaking, he's a crafter, he's an artificer, going a little rogue now, but he's an artificer, and his archetype really is the monster hunter. Out of the way. Next, we have our local Fearblorg, which I don't remember the name of off the top of my head for some reason. So, yeah, there's that. His archetype is he is a cleric of war, and he's kind of going to be chaotic neutral. His archetype is the extreme libertarian. Next, we're going to have our lawful good barbarian. His archetype, bring him right up to the forefront. He is a Goliath, massive hulk of a brute with a big ol' axe. His archetype is really not very barbarian. He's a barbarian. Here we go. We have our paladin, which is not actually a orc, but frankly, I just happened to have he had his own mini and he brought it home with him, so I'm using this for the recap. His archetype is a gladiator, which is kind of why I chose that particular build. It was the heaviest armored orc I could find, and orcs make me think gladiators for some reason. Don't ask me why. Okay, and then we have next coming in, we have our warlocks. First, we have our super rapey warlock. His archetype is rapist, and he is really good at Eldritch Blast. Now we have our fairly normal warlock. His name is Lucifer, and his archetype is rip off a TV show. Finally, we have our mage, who showed up at the last minute and whose archetype is used a pre-generated character, and whose archetype is girlfriend that got dragged along. Don't know if it's actually somebody's girlfriend or not, but you know, whatever. So first things first, the mists come and take us all. Actually, and transport us into a dense woods that was different from the woods we originally camped out in. Suddenly, we're walking down the trail, and we find a empty town with only 2 people in it, which are small children that we are meant to talk to. Obviously, the first thing that happens is half of our party goes to the pub. The pub is empty. There is no booze anywhere, and they are pissed. This one right here isn't actually paying attention to the game. And then finally me, one of the warlocks, and the cleric all go and talk to the children who are ghosts, but we don't know this yet. And we may never find out. At which point we have then gone through and got a quest to go to a house and and find the monster that is scaring the children, essentially. All right, and then first thing we do when we enter the house, we see the cool mantle place, and this guy goes, "Ooh, my cool sword!" steals it. Next thing we do, obviously, is we go upstairs and there's a bunch of chests. One of them locked. We then spin. My character spins this character. And who else was it that kept trying? That one. So this one keeps trying to break the lock down with his strength. Us two keep rolling until we can finally pick the lock. I eventually picked the lock, being a artificer, and get a bunch of crossbow bolts and bolts. We also stole their wine. It is in my pouch, or in my bag of holding, that I built because we leveled up pretty soon after, and you'll see. You'll see why. So I have the wine. No one else can have the wine until I am ready to give it to them. But frankly, the most important thing and interesting thing is this guy right here, the rapist noble, decides that he is going to tear up the floorboards in the second floor area that we're in, and not go to the basement where the monster was supposed to be, because we were all just kind of walking around, and he tore up the floorboards, and suddenly there is a trapdoor goes straight into the dungeon. At which point we leveled up, because the way Death House works is you're supposed to level up after you find this particular door. So yeah, we skipped a whole bunch of story doing that. Yeah, that happened. Next thing you know, we're in a bunch of crypts, and obviously, since we see coffins everywhere, we start opening them. So we see a bunch of coffins, and we start opening them. 3 of them empty. One of them has 2 swarms of insects in it. The insects then proceed to attack us. The mage does most all of the damage, despite not paying any attention to the game itself. Next, we are promptly then railroaded, sort of. We kind of deserve to be railroaded, just given our personalities and tendency to wander off. But we got kind of railroaded into this particular area full of bones, where somebody had the bright idea to get all the bones together and to ask me to light it on fire. So, obviously, I cast Firebolt on it and lit it on fire. Turns out, once the room was well lit, there was a Grick, which is not this thing. It's actually, I just don't have a miniature for it. It's a snake with a beak and tentacles. And we fought that thing. It was fairly easy. It died relatively quickly. Our party was just a little too many people. Next, as we move along, we then come in to here and are promptly bombarded by monsters. But that's okay, though, because despite the fact that the paladin died, well, was knocked out and probably should have died, the cleric, pretty much all of the, I believe, 7 monsters that we had were undead. All undead. And most of them failed their wisdom saving throw against the cleric here's turn undead. In the end, we only had to kill 2 of them, and one of them just happened to be explodified as it was running away. Alright, so, next thing you know, we're in the boss room, or at least what appears to be the boss room. The, warlock over here keeps trying to the rapist warlock keeps trying to convince the not paying attention wizard to use Shocking Touch and shock the completely watered down floor in order to try to kill anything that's in there. When this fails when I decide to just go in and everybody follows. A bunch of ghostly cultists are all chanting at us to make a sacrifice, and we essentially have to make a sacrifice. There is, however, from what we can tell, a giant monster in the back of the room inside the cave. I propose that we either don't do the sacrifice at all, being a neutral good character myself, or that if possible we grab the monster, drag its ass over to the altar, and slaughter it on top of the altar. Because at least that would be a fun challenge. Of course, there is apparently a rat in there, and the rapist over here rapes the rat and kills it over the altar, fulfilling the ghost's particular longing. Next, we have the Next, we all start fighting the shambling mound, which is a giant bunch of vines that we eventually do kill, and it was fairly easy overall. But then as soon as it dies, it screams in pain and summons something the DM just kind of randomly pulled out, which was not a yeti, no, a giant death slad. Luckily, death slads apparently don't possess the magical abilities that their gray and blue counterparts do. So, we killed that as well. Nobody died, but it was a much more difficult and exciting fight than many of the others we had been into so far. Things stopped falling down. And that's our D&D game, and how we defeated Death House without paying any attention to any of the story because we skipped it all.